for board members, for the President of the United States, or whatever precinct you're walking. And we cannot show up to vote in your own union election. That is not acceptable. Now, I go into my nice side. I have a nice side. This evening, our moderator comes to us by way of being a teacher herself. She is a math department chair, I believe, at Washington High School. She likes reading. She likes anything that has to do with technology. She's good with her hands with technology. She really enjoys helping the children. You know, I have seen her in work. I have seen her several times where she has accomplished whatever she touches. It doesn't turn to gold, but when she touches it, it turns into a project that's completed, and then if she wants to sell it, then it goes to gold. So I'm going to introduce to you to this evening, and I hope if she has one more thing that she'd like to share with us, she might share one interesting thing about her, maybe that I don't even know. I want you to put your hands together, and I want you to give a warm welcome to Dr. Loretta Johnson Smith.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Copeland mentioned, my name is Dr. Loretta Johnson Smith, and I do work at Washington Prep. One interesting fact about me, I work at the school that I attended. And this year, I do serve as the instructional coach at Washington Prep. Before we get into our questions, I would like those candidates who are present to just state your name and the office that you are running for.
Greg Russel, running for president.
My name is David Lyell, and I'm running for UTLA secretary.
Let's start again with the microphone here.
Greg Russel, running for president.
Hi, David Lyell. I'm running for UTLA secretary.
My name is David Feldman, and I'm running for secondary vice president.
Tomas Flores, and I am one of the candidates for UTLA treasurer.
My name is Wil Page. I'm running for UTLA NEA vice president.
Soni Lloyd, running for UTLA president.
Thank you so much. So our first question is, and it's directed to all of our candidates. You have 1 minute each. Express why you chose to run for the office that you are running for.
I have the mic, I'll start. I'm running because I feel like this union needs unity. It needs a leader that can bring all the desperate factions together, the Valley, the North, Harbor, the East, West, liberals, conservatives. We all want the same thing, and that is great classrooms, great education for our students. And I don't think our leadership right now has the model that can bring this union together. So it really works for everybody, reduces our workload, increases our standard of living, and really just makes life better for students and teachers in public education. I want to end privatization, I want to reduce class size, and stop LAUSD manipulation of the budget and hoarding funds that are meant for our students.
Again, Wil Page, running for UTLA NEA vice president. And I made the decision to run this election cycle during the NEA-RA in Houston. I've been a delegate to the NEA-RA for the last 6 years. I haven't missed a service center meeting in 6 years. I haven't missed an RA floor meeting in 6 years. My two opponents in this race, Gabriel Serrano and Alex Caputo-Burrell, combined have 1 day of service to our members in the last 6 years on the NEA floor. Yet both of them feel qualified to actually run for this position. I've been doing the work on behalf of our members on the national level and on the state level with CTA. And my thing is, I understand that roles change. That happens. This is the first time in our history we've seen a presidential candidate move down into a lower candidate position. I'm not offended by what Alex has done in our union. The organizing that we have had to have happened. But now it's time to build on the foundation that both he and Cecily Meyer Cruz, who was an absolutely wonderful steward for the NEA vice president position, they were great stewards. But now it's time for new leadership in this union. And I feel like I've put in the work, and it's time for people to step forward and challenge the status quo.
Okay. Tomas Flores, candidate for treasurer. We have a financial challenge in this union. We have members have been paying more dues, BFF, Build the Future, Fund the Fight, and we're not sure whether, I'm not certain that the money that has brought into the union has been spent in the best interest of all our members. I also believe that we can do much more. I don't think, for once, that we have area reps who understand the challenges of teachers in the classroom. They are organizers, they're outside of the education profession. One of my goals, and what I promote, is the consolidation of the secretary and the treasurer position in the next election cycle. That would have to be moved through a constitutional amendment. And why? Our affiliates do that. Look it up. They don't have secretary treasurer.
Hello everybody, my name's David Feldman. I'm running for secondary vice president of UTLA, and I'm running because I really think that secondary teachers, really all UTLA members, deserve somebody who is a vice president who's in the classroom. You know, that is very critical. It goes to kind of what Tomas says. I feel that the classroom experience has kind of lessened in value in recent years in the union, unjustifiably. Our area reps, a lot of the people being hired don't have classroom experience. And it's one thing to learn the contract, but it's another thing to really feel what we go through every day, know what our day is like, have that certain urgency. When somebody has an issue, it's urgent to get on it. And I think I understand that. As a classroom teacher, I'm also concerned about the decreasing democracy in UTLA. The fact that we have to organize these debates is a problem.
My name is David Lyell. I'm a candidate for UTLA secretary. I want to thank Ms. Randall, Dr. Copeland, and Dr. Johnson Smith. Okay, I got that right. Yeah, for all your efforts in putting on this candidate debate discussion, and I really appreciate it and hope this is the beginning of a longer conversation we can have about the direction of UTLA. Part of the reason I'm running is, from my flyer I have a line that says, "The strike was a great symbolic victory, but it wasn't enough. We need to follow it with actual dollars and cents victories for our members." I think it's important that we have conversations about what we're doing, of course, and why we're doing it, and that when our union takes any action, that we follow through and make sure we're achieving what we set out to achieve. Again, David Lyell, candidate for UTLA secretary. Thank you.
Well, Greg Russel, candidate for president, and so I basically want to return your union to you. I'm into the service of our members. You're paying money. You should expect a return on that. And that is not the focus of present-day UTLA. Their focus is just about everywhere else. They do what they have to remain in office as far as servicing you. But the focus, like I said, is elsewhere. If you just look at tonight's HOR, those people that were in the audience the lies that are being spread about how our union functions. The board of directors is not above the House of Representatives. Okay, when they introduce a motion here and say that we, the House of Representatives, have no say in it, it is just for our information, that is wrong. We overrule the board of director actions, we overrule the officer actions. The only thing overruling the House of Representatives is the membership.
Thank you. Our next question is multi-tiered, and you have 1 minute to respond. What are your goals? What would you like to achieve for UTLA in the next 3 years? Again, what are your goals, and what would you like to achieve for UTLA in the next 3 years?
Well, thank you very much again, Wil Page, running for UTLA NEA Vice President. One of the things that I'm looking to do is put the politics back into our political officer positions. The UTLA NEA Vice President and the UTLA AFT Vice President, traditionally those two positions dealt with a majority of their job outside of the NEA and the CTA and AFT and CFT was to actually deal with board members. And the LAUSD board race is an absolutely important thing that we sort of have forgotten about. And I'm being honest, our leadership says the right things around board issues. But if you look back at the last 2 election cycles since our current leadership has been in power, we have lost 4 of 5 contested elections when CCSA and UTLA had contested elections. The only election we've actually won outright was Scott Schmerelson's election. Every other election we have lost. Now, we lucked into Jackie Goldberg because Ref Rodriguez was up on indictments. That's a big part of what I'm looking to do with a board leadership training academy and getting going on that. Thank you.
One of my, well, as I stated earlier, consolidating the secretary treasurer positions, same as we have at the state and national affiliate level, and then using those savings to fund an area rep, an additional area rep, with someone who has classroom experience, who understands what we go through, who understands what something in the contract means in the classroom. We have a strike fund that is being managed by bankers. None of the people in this building understand how to manage that risk. I was invited to the first meeting after the current leadership became enthroned in the first time, to sit in this meeting where they were discussing with the bankers the risk involved in this and what the bankers were proposing to invest. I was the only one that had questions for the bankers that they couldn't answer.
Certainly, one thing that I would like to accomplish when I'm secondary VP is, once again, make this a more democratic union. You know, we should be having debates. They should be UTLA sponsored, UTLA promoted. And that just goes to how members are treated. I think if I'm secondary VP, I don't care, after this election's over, I don't care who is on what slate. I want everybody treated equally, treated fairly. I don't think that's happening right now. I think for instance, in Central area, we don't have any community schools. You know, I think that's for political reasons. That's not right. We are one of the most oppressed areas in this city. We should have community schools that should be represented. I also think another issue that goes on that doesn't get addressed by leadership is this ongoing problem with age discrimination that we have in our schools. Veteran teachers being pushed out, being bullied into early retirement. There should be a lawsuit against the district for that.
David Lyell, candidate for UTLA Secretary. Over the next 3 years, one of the things I'd like to see from UTLA is better, more clear communication. If sometimes everything is just a top priority, and I think it becomes overwhelming for members. And one example of that is we had a recent distraction with the endorsement vote for Bernie Sanders. I thought we should have used online voting so that all members would have been able to cast an advisory vote so that they don't feel alienated no matter who you support. And what was terrible about that was we did this right as we're heading into a school board election, and yes, national politics matter very much, but local politics matter too, and our school board directly impacts our jobs. So I'd like to see more focus in that area. Thank you.
I don't really like to talk about what's going to happen in the future. I don't think it's relevant, really. Anyone can come up with some pretty words and promises that never happen. You need to elect people on what they've done. And my track record shows that I've cared and worked to solve problems for UTLA without pay, without hesitation for many years. Unemployment, I'm the guy trying to get money in everyone's pocket, the substitute teachers to make it through the summer. You name it. Transparency, I talked about it on my YouTube video from the last election. You can see it there. It got repealed 2 HORs ago. That's House of Representatives. And now UTLA can have secret meetings. If I was in office, of course, I would get rid of that.
Soni Lloyd, candidate UTLA president. So really what I'd like to accomplish is what was accomplished in the strike, right, with that momentum and building on that, right? And how do you build a people's movement, right? You unlock the power of people. You educate them about what's going on, about privatization, right? These parents getting suckered into these charter schools because they don't understand the game, right? We can teach them about that. You educate them about how the district is hoarding money, right? Before the strike, Bootner said, we're gonna have a $500 million deficit this year, right? Now the strike is over, we're at the end of the year, the actuals are out, there's $200 million plus, right? Still a $2 billion reserve. So you teach people what's going on, and they will come on board and fight for their schools, fight for the future of their students and families. I want to return prosperity to the teaching profession. We should not struggle without a cost of living increase every year. And I want teachers to develop education, right? Pedagogy. We should always be talking about good teaching when we meet, so the parents are assured that good teachers are in every classroom across this district.
So the strike was mentioned by a few of you all. The next question deals with the strike. I want you all to name one thing that we did great during the strike, and then name another thing that we could have improved upon during the strike.
Tomas Flores, candidate for treasurer. As a member of the bargaining team, I can tell you that mobilizing and actually empowering our school sites and motivating them to show almost 100% at every school in our district was the greatest achievement we could have hoped for. On the downside, the day of when we ratified that contract, and I know that this is what's been said by leadership, we should have done a better job of getting that information so it could truly be discussed and understood by our members prior to voting or ratifying the contract. We were rushed through that process. That is one thing that should never happen again. We should be willing to do a more rational and thorough vetting of the recommendations that we take to the members on the contract.
Well, I think that in many ways the strike was very inspiring. We were united across this city. People took to the streets, and no matter whatever the politics of the area was, people took to the streets and we united during that time. tens of thousands of people taking to the streets for issues that were really for the kids. I thought it took a lot of the organizing amongst our members, and we really united behind it, getting public support. And every day, every week, I've been a social justice organizer a long time. To get thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in the streets every day for a week, that is not an easy thing to do. Things that we could have done different. I think the power structure should have changed within our union. Austin Butner, why is he still there? He shouldn't be there. After the strike and after the kind of support that we had, we should have kicked him out.
David Lyell, candidate for secretary. The number of people we had out on the streets was insane. That was inspiring. That was what we did great. Areas of improvement. Before the strike, we heard all about the $1.8 billion reserve. After the strike, we didn't hear about that anymore. Also, I thought there could have been better communication with members. Substitute teachers in long-term positions had the number of days they worked to qualify for long-term pay cut back to 1. And so they lost out a ton of money, about $2,000, give or take. UTLA has filed a PERB charge on behalf of them. HHS workers have been given additional duties without any additional compensation, and reduced workload teachers are going to lose out on retirement, roughly about $2,000 a year for the rest of their life. So I thought there could have been much better communication with members beforehand about what we should expect going into and out of the strike on the other hand. I hear it. Thank you.
Greg Russel for president. I gotta agree with David Lyell on the communication, and as well as how the voting was done. I think Will mentioned that, Tomas. So the need to improve that, but there seems to be a sordid history of always doing that with contract ratification. But hopefully online voting will correct that. And so yeah, it was great having communities back us up and schools being unified, and I really hope that continues.
Okay, Soni Lloyd, a lot went well during the strike. Things I would change, open negotiations. They went into secret negotiations that last week. So all of a sudden, we don't know what's going on, right? And that's our contract. Right, UTLA doesn't work for the district, we do. So it's not right that we don't get to have a say in what they're negotiating. 24 hours before we vote, right, I made 2 motions in my area in the House of Reps about we need a minimum of 24 hours before we vote on any contract. There should have been mass meetings around the city with students, parents, and community to read that contract and talk about it. That was a people's strike, and they robbed it from us by ending it like they did. That was a terrible end to a great strike. The settlement, class size, I'm still dealing with over 40 kids in a history class. And nurses, still don't have a nurse at every school, right? Even though it says that in the contract. So we need to enforce that contract.
I thought one of the best things that we did coming into the strike was the push for the strike authorization. 81% of our members voted to actually voted in the strike authorization process. 98% of those voted to give the board the right to strike. Why can't we do that for elections though? 23% voted 6 years ago. 25% voted 3 years ago. We'll probably see similar numbers. Additionally, and we could harp on the exit plan. That was a massive issue. But we also didn't tap into the unity that we built in that strike and carry it over to today. Here we are a year out, and I feel like we are more divisive in the age of Janice than we were a year ago when we danced in the rain. Angelinos in the rain, we don't do that, but that's what we did because that's what mattered. And we are now at a point where we are more fractured and divided than we could have possibly been a year ago.
Next question. UTLA supported bond, which was to bring more funds to LAUSD. That measure did not pass. It is reported that some teachers or LA residents did not vote. Where did we go wrong? Why didn't we get this measure passed?
Measure EE, is that? I thought Measure EE was, in the end, I thought it was a little bit misguided. I thought it was misguided because I think in the future, as a union, we're going to have to continue to fight. We're going to have to continue to take job actions. As you know, I know at the House of Reps, I mentioned France earlier. You know, we're really going to have to take to the streets and organize and mobilize and continue to get community support. I think the problem that we had with Measure EE is that we sent a message that if we're going to strike and if we're going to fight against LAUSD, well, the people in LA, the homeowners are going to have to pay a little bit. And I think that was the wrong message to send. Ultimately, that's why it lost. It's the rich that should be taxed, right? The corporations that should be taxed. So when we're looking at schools and community first, that's more of the way we should go.
It's such a great question and such a difficult question to answer. My initial thoughts, well, I've thought about it, but I thought we should have had better communication about the structure of the tax. In general, when we start to talk to voters about saying you're gonna have to pay more in taxes, they're gonna be less likely to support that. But if we emphasize that this is gonna tax buildings that have huge square footage, much more than the homeowner, the small homeowner, it has a much better chance of passing. And if we emphasize that this is going to be supporting schools and children and classrooms, it will be a much more effective message. Overall, I thought the messaging was not very effective, and our ground game obviously wasn't either. I know UTLA was part of a coalition, so we can't completely place blame in one area. Thank you.
Greg Russel for president. So there was, it was rushed. The Measure E was rushed, and they also flubbed it. First there was an oversight committee, then there wasn't, and there were all these exceptions for people getting out of the tax. And so it was very worse. Some people knew that they couldn't put a whole lot of faith in something that just goes back and forth that. But I think something much more important is the violations of our Constitution going on right now, which 2 House meetings ago I brought up to our president, and he denied knowing that there was a deletion from Article 6, Section 2B. You can look it up. It's online, utla.net, Constitution and Bylaws. And it was erased March 27th this year. Do you remember changing the Constitution this year? No. It never came to us. The other problem was the newspaper, United Teacher, says we get regular issues. They've been cut in half, from 8 to 4. Again, the president acted like everything was the same. He said nothing has changed. Did you get a November UT? No.
Okay, first of all, look at the source. EE was a Bootner idea. It came from Bootner via Rugose. He approached Alex with that. So right then and there, you're thinking, this not a great idea. It's coming from the elites, right? Tax the average homeowner, gentrification, Los Angeles, right? So I don't think EE played into our hands. If it passes, then the district doesn't have to be accountable for their $2 billion reserve for their hoarding. Right, so now we can pay for the contract. If it doesn't pass, like it didn't pass, now they have an excuse, right? We can't pay for the contract. Historically as well, you know, this needed a 66% bar to pass. Measures like this, these parcel taxes don't pass in California. They changed the law back in the 1980s and need 66% to pass. So rushing something like that and knowing the bar was so high, we put a lot of resources into that. And, you know, that's why they passed.
We had spent the previous year vilifying Austin Butner, and LAUSD's budgetary processes. And then, coming out of the strike, Alex Caputo-Pearl, Eric Garcetti, and Austin Butner basically walk hand in hand up on the stage at City Hall, coming to the voters and asking, hey, let's give LAUSD more money. That was where our error happened. We didn't give ourselves time to actually build coalitions, to build up. We should be voting on EE on March 3rd. We voted during a special election when there was a city council race happening out in the valley in the most Republican district in Los Angeles. And we wonder why we lost this. It's a special election. We couldn't even get 10% of the voters out for this. This was something where we had 60,000 people in the streets of Los Angeles on days of the strikes, but we could not get them to vote in a way that we needed them to. Because we just spent all that time telling the city, the district doesn't know how to spend money properly. And we made a massive mistake in rushing that vote on June 3rd. It should have been happening on March 3rd, 2020.
Tomas Flores for treasurer? Yes. Timing was ill planned. We rushed into it. The special election, very definitely a consideration. Plus, the fact the voters rejected the measure because they do not trust LAUSD. As was said by my colleague here, Wil, we vilified the district and then we allied with them. And then we're asking the public to trust the district. And then again, the low turnout, miserable low turnout. Special election, I would call that hubris on our part as a union, our leadership. It was not necessary to go rushing into this measure with the belief that we had the momentum. Yes, we have the momentum, but we need to develop the awareness and lead and teach the voters. Delaying that election would have been much more prudent.
I will ask one more question before opening the floor to the audience for any questions. Most teachers perceive that there is a disconnect between UTLA and teachers. This includes counselors, health and human service personnel, etc. Where is the disconnect?
Between teachers and HHS?
Between teachers and UTLA. And when referring to teachers, we're also talking about counselors and all the other staff.
Thank you. David Lyell, candidate for secretary. I think there's a disconnect between teachers and health and human services professionals in the area that, substitute teachers, adult education teachers, often feel like that they're just a bargaining chip during negotiations. That UTLA represents them, but just more of as an afterthought and not a central part of the union. Oftentimes when people talk, they'll just say teachers. And health and human services professionals, substitutes, adult education educators think, well, hey, wait a minute, I'm a UTLA member too, do I not matter? And I think, of course, the union needs to do a better job of advocating for all those groups, other than just saying they're going to do so at bargaining time, and then, frankly, not always following through. Thank you.
Greg Russel for president. I can see that they're disconnected from most things. They're busy, they're overworked, they've got dependents as well as a crazy work schedule. It's 365 days a year, right? So that's something that our leadership can take advantage of, most unions can take advantage of, and I'm not for that. I think always we should be jumping on the problems. People email me, call me, I answer them right back. I try and fix that problem. They got a write-up, they can't collect unemployment, they don't understand the contract, their rights. I'm on it. They're not disconnected from me. You don't have to worry about that. When they switched our Smart Find Subfinder system, the computer was dropping a lot of my job offers. I was on welfare. I was on getting SNAP, right? So I wasn't getting enough jobs. So if you think that you have to worry about me being in an ivory tower, you don't.
So I can get into the specifics of this, but I think the overriding problem is listening, right? You could say Health and Human Services, teachers on down the line, counselors. Leadership really doesn't have a model of listening to the members. They like to talk at you, tell you their agenda, right? But when is the last time they really listen to you, what you go through on a daily basis, right? And take your genius, your collective genius at your school site into account. So yeah, there's a lot of problems with HHS in specifically, right? They're not normed, right? In that they're at-will employees, where the rest of us have due process right if they want to let us go. They do yard duty and things where they can't let regular teachers do. They don't have a matrix. I sat through a meeting of theirs tonight, and I was kind of appalled. Wow, you guys pay dues? And this is type of, you have basically no protection? So it comes back to listening to your members, the people you're collecting money from, and valuing their input and fighting for them. And that's what I want to do.
The disconnect that educators are beginning to feel in our union comes down to the fact that our leadership is in an echo chamber. They hear what's happening in that room amongst the board of directors that is basically a slate. There's very little debate, there's very little dissent. That's a problem. Because when I go out to school sites, I was at Silmar High School yesterday, and I asked them, before I even spoke to them, I asked them what are they dealing with. Counselors talked to me about how post-strike, their issues haven't been dealt with. I talked to a coach who mentioned that she's getting the same stipend today that she was receiving 20 years ago. Why aren't we doing something about members who are coaches? Why aren't we doing something about the teacher who still has rats in her classroom? Because we have breakfast in the classroom, which was failed by this leadership as well. So when I'm looking at why our membership is feeling disconnected, we don't do a good job servicing our members anymore. We're great at organizing, but in the age of Janice, we will lose our members if we do not service them.
Focus has been.
Mike is probably dying.
Laura.
Yeah, the mic is probably dying now.
Okay. Yes, focus on organizing instead of services to members. That has been to the detriment of members' morale. Yes, we have. They have been dismissing members' school sites' concerns. Everything is an emergency. Yes, we become jaded when we get asked to do things on a quick turnaround or place the demands on people. Us, we're in the classroom and we're overwhelmed by excessive testing and other issues and dealing with unfriendly administrators at times. But the organizing that they've been doing, please, has been to solidify, to consolidate their hold on power. I believe that they have been grooming people to take hold positions of leadership as chairs, even at the school sites. If you're not up and you question what the officers are doing and their motivation for, or just clarify, then you are vilified. You are disloyal to UTLA. You're not just concerned about the issue, and you're someone to be moved aside and discarded.
You know, I think the issue that we just had regarding, the presidential election was just symbolic of that, right? We're talking about presidential politics. I go to all these union meetings and we spend hours on end talking about a presidential election when I'm dealing with a bully principal. I'm at a PLA school, they're always coming after me. We're not making enough money. We're not making it up with cost of living adjustment. We got some people are at pilot schools and getting dismissed, and we have all these issues, and yet we're talking about a presidential race. It just seems very disconnected. And to go to what Tomas has been saying and others, we got one slate rule. And that's why they're disconnected. They haven't been in the classroom. We got a UTLA that increasingly isn't being run by teachers itself. And the fact that the UP officers aren't even here, they don't even feel like we're worth talking to. That just shows a real disconnect.
Thank you. Now I am opening up the floor to the audience. Are there 3 individuals who would like to ask our panel a question? Yes, please come forward.
Well, actually, I would have just so many questions, but I'm going to get to one that that I think responds to a lot of what you've been saying or builds upon it. I've been teaching for 25 years, and I do remember when I started my second year, I was a chapter chair, and I would call an officer such as Becky Robinson or Ana Valencia, and before I knew it, my principal would be saying, "Who'd you call? Because my director's here." And they would just file grievances without me even asking, to protect me and not even tell me. So I know there was a change around, it started around the time of Duffy, that it was decided that chapter chairs would be filing those grievances. And I've watched many activists, especially in the last few years, be targeted. Some of our strongest activists who would advocate for other members. And it's very hard to prove you're being targeted because of your union activity, but these were some of the strongest, most present activists who aren't around anymore. So I'm wondering, when you're an officer, how are you going to get involved in that? I agree with what's being said. There is a disconnect. I'm glad we're a social justice union, but as they say, first you clean house. If your members aren't being treated with justice, you need to start at home. You can't clean up the whole world without cleaning up at home. So I'm wondering, how would you as an officer help? Because I don't think the average member is feeling in their day-to-day workload that there's really an awareness of what we're going through, and that there's a real protection coming from our union. Thank you. So how would you resolve that?
So I would just continue what I'm doing. So transparency, communication, fairness, democracy, everything would be outed, people would be helped like I've been doing. It's my track record. When the UP monopoly came into power, there were the board of directors meetings almost never had a executive session before they came into power. After they came into power, more than 50% of the board of directors is executive session. That's just one example.
So I can really relate. I'm an activist at my school, Venice High School, always have been, and I've been targeted, right, for my activity that I was, suggested to do, right, by leadership. And now, when my butt was in a sling on a grievance, right, stage 2, I didn't even have union representation to come down. I had to go get someone out of the yard to come and be a witness, right? So I would say, first of all, I would have a class action lawsuit. Everybody who's been targeted, right, for their political activity, for their union activity, that's illegal. That's a labor violation. There's probably hundreds of cases. Alex had his own case, Roshni had her own case, but you collect them all up together and boom, and put damages on that. Don't mess with our teachers again. Allow them to educate the public, provide political education about matters of public concern, right? And the grievance process, it does need to be strengthened, right? There's a lot, the grievances are not being handled. They're telling us as chairs, don't file grievances. We have a contract, right? And you don't enforce it through the grievance process, then you don't have a contract. And that's, And I would hire more organizers as well to help teachers out so they don't have to do the organizing themselves and get in trouble. We have organizers down at the school sites working the sidewalk.
On that last point, I actually completely disagree with Soni here. We have enough organizers at UTLA at this point. That's all we've done is hire organizers. We don't hire USW staff who is actually in with what our cause is. We're hiring people from Local 99. We're hiring people from SEIU 2015. We're hiring people who've gone through organizing structures, but they have no clue what it's like to be a teacher, an educator, a nurse, a counselor, a librarian on a daily basis. And we need to start servicing our members again. And that comes by having area reps who are in this building, and you're able to reach them. I've actually made phone calls this week. I've only had one of them return. I've had 3 phone calls in, 1 returned. That's a problem. And the thing is, these are issues that my members at my school site are dealing with. And I'm told, well, don't file a grievance because we have to go through this staged process where you speak with the principal and then hopefully you come to an agreement and then you move on from there. We need to service our members again, and we need to do that first by hiring area reps who represent us, not organizing solely.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, more reps who understand the concerns of every teacher in the classroom. We need those. We need people with that experience. We can't just be organizers. We have those organizers making phone calls, spending time getting members to do more of the stuff that we need to do to remain in power and to continue to be famous and have a wide citywide platform which only gives visibility really to the powers that be here at UTLA. And I can call that self-aggrandizement.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, I kind of echo what a lot of people have said. One, we got to bring the grievance procedure back. Obviously, grievances are not a priority for this UTLA leadership. They feel like, hey, we're talking about a presidential election, we're up here, your problems are down there, right? And that's the real message being sent, right? Is that our problems, our everyday issues, our everyday struggles aren't important because we're talking about big things and your problems are petty, right? And that's the message being sent when we have area reps who don't have classroom experience. We need to get back to hiring area reps, people in this building that have education experience. And yeah, we should be an organizing union, but we should be an organizing union around people's everyday concerns. Age discrimination, once again, to me that's a big issue. It should be a lawsuit against the district. We should be fighting on evaluations. And for the big funding issues, we need to take on the state, Sacramento itself.
David Lyell, candidate for secretary. The 2 most foremost functions of a union are negotiating contracts and contract enforcement. So a contract is only as good as its enforcement. If you're at a school site and your principal's cool and everything's fine, you don't really think about this because everything's working the way it should. You like your job, you like your staff, but if you're at a site where you have a bully principal or you just happen to encounter some workplace issue and you go to your union and you say, hey, I have an issue, I'd like to file a grievance, and that grievance is not filed immediately and aggressively pursued on your behalf, that's half the reason you pay union dues. It's vital, and that filter, it's just ethically and morally wrong to not pursue grievances aggressively. Not only does it hurt that member, not only does it stand against everything collective bargaining laws are all about, it's just, it filters down to other members and they hear about it and it weakens all of us. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi,
question.
Hi, Norland Davis, PSA counselor, Health and Human Services Committee Chair. So I represent over 18 different itinerant professionals, from school nurses, counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, deaf and hard of hearing, OPTP, and additional groups, again, 18 different groups under the UTLA structure. So when you talk about HHS issues, I am the choir. So what we're looking for is a Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson to fight for us, just as though you are in the ring to fight for us. We don't want to hear lip service, as we've continued to have for the past numerous years. So I'm going to ask you a specific question, and just know that I'll be back in February to ask the same question. I'm going to hope for a more detailed answer. So my question today is, what would you do to, let me rephrase that. So teachers say that they want autonomy to teach their students, right? So we collectively would like to be known as Health and Human Services professionals, and we want the same autonomy to practice our individual professions. So my question is, what would you do to support us being able to work within an educational system to practice our individual professions to support students?
Okay, Norland, first of all, you know, we teachers, we have an academic freedom clause in our contract, right? And I believe Health and Human Services need something that is just like that as well. So we have the freedom to come up with our own lesson plans, our own format, right? Deliver them how we want to, as long as we're covering the standards. And you know, Health and Human Services definitely needs an academic freedom clause, because you guys are professionals. You are teachers, right? Also, I would educate the public. I would bring the parents and the students in on your issues. Everything you just read off to me, right? That just really, and I was at your committee meeting tonight, and I was surprised. I didn't know that they lumped you guys all together, right, and bargain on your stuff, and they put you all under special ed, and you all don't serve special ed necessarily. So I think that needs to be parsed out, all the different categories of what you do, and academic freedom for everybody.
Sounds like you need a union. Realistically, ladies and gentlemen, the HHS staff, they are lumped under, in our contract, under Article 21, that's where they're lumped under. They need their own article. We need to actually have an article within our contract that deals with them. For the first time, we actually have a special ed article. It's Article 21 in our contract. That's great that we have that. Now, some of the things that are in there are worse off than they were under Appendix A. But realistically, Norland, your division, you need an article in the contract that deals with issues that are related to HHS and not lumped under special ed. Until that happens, they will be forsaken when it comes to negotiations. I think we're going to see that happen in negotiations with the bilingual piece that's being lumped in under salary. Norland has been made promises, the HHS staff has been made promises, and those have not happened. It's always, wait till next time. Wait till next time. Now, I'm not going to come here and tell you and give you a promise, but I would fight to make sure that in our next negotiation process, we get you at the table and you represent your folks and get yourself and the HHS 18 divisions their own article in the contract.
Personally, when I return to a school site from any UTLA meeting where it concerns HHS, or even if it doesn't, I visit specifically and sit across from the HHS person, the psychiatric social worker, the PSA, the school psychologist, and the nurse, and tell them what UTLA is doing on their behalf, if they're doing, or what are they concerned, so I can bring them back here. That's just going to my school site. I've taken that as a personal mission. I know also that right now, when you go to meetings, for PSAs or psychiatric social workers, you are not allowed to make announcements about UTLA or your union concerns. I would push to have this as a right of making announcements, not have a meeting, but just like we do have announcements when we are at a faculty meeting, you should be given time to do that. Talk amongst yourself and say, this is our concerns.
You know, I really think that we really need to fight for real full funding for our schools so that we can have real representation of all members at our schools. You know, during the EE, we talked about the district had $2 billion in surplus during the strike, and then during EE, where all of a sudden the district is starting to go under, and if it doesn't pass, it's Armageddon. You know, we need to use the real budget to really fund all these positions so that they're not overwhelmed, that we lower their caseloads, and that we have real representation, real contractual representation for HHS members in our contracts.
Why is it the air conditioning goes off right as we get a question about health and human services professionals? Thank you, Mr. Davis, for the question. What I would do is, you know, with 18 different groups, you have to have a meeting of the minds and figure out what contract demands you want to put forth, organize the committee. I would help advocate to do that. And push for that. Make sure that there's strong voices speaking out, parents, to help educate the community about and UTLA members about what HHS members do. You want the same autonomy to practice your profession as teachers? That's a great question. So part of what I would do is sit down with you and ask us to work on some sort of proposal that addresses that. Yeah, thank you.
Greg Russel, President. So you talk about the ignored little stepchild, and you've got my attention because substitute teachers, we're used to it, we've been battling it. I go to the unjustly housed teacher, now EdPAC, and I'm the cluster leader for itinerants in Valley West. And for 2 years, I've been trying to get them the voice that they deserve in Valley West, and I've gotten almost nowhere. I ask people for this and that, and it's ignored. Right now, we're trying to get sign-in sheets for the itinerants, contact info for the chairs of the itinerants, so I can give them a cluster call to come to the area meetings where they'll have a voice and get what they need. Strangely, UP Monopoly is not backing me up. So if I was in, there would definitely be a difference.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 more from the audience.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Stacy Webster, Central Area Chair. And first I want to thank all of you for staying, for being here at this debate, be willing to debate or answer questions. I mean, I really appreciate that. That shows a lot. Okay, I was having a hard time picking my question. I know that I have several, but I'll only pick one. As the area chair for Central, I have many struggles with my area. One being, we get left out. And David mentioned earlier, Central area, which is the poorest neighborhoods in Los Angeles, by far, no community schools. None. But guess what? We had a whole lot of co-locations going on this week. I got the list of how many of our schools are being co-located. I feel like it's a civil rights issue, and it's frustrating because, you know, it's coming from all directions. So what could you guys do to make that better, to bring more resources to Central, where we have our poorest neighborhoods? I mean, we need a little extra to get our students educated. They have to meet their basic survival needs before they can learn. How could you help, as an officer, help Central get the resources they need?
It was egregious that Central area had not a single community school brought to it. When I found that out, I was embarrassed for our union. And when I started mapping out where the community schools are, it made sense to me. I noticed that there were a lot in the east, there were some out in the valley, and on the west side. Now, for me, I look at that, and then I look where Union Power has its strongholds. And I saw something very clear. You'll notice that Union Power has lost people in South area, Central area. They've lost people in the Valley. They've lost people in Harbor. It's because once they need you, they're with you. But the minute you actually need something from them, and they see you as a political liability, they cut you off. I know I'm putting myself at risk in losing my voice in this union by running in this election. You spoke up. And unfortunately, Ms. Webster, they haven't treated you or Central area right. We need to make sure we have egalitarian processes within this union. And that doesn't mean more community schools in one area over another. It means making sure services that are voted upon and struck upon are across the board.
As a member of the Board of Directors representing Central, yes, we are. I consider us a stepchild of this union. We, I agree, are considered a challenge. We are the unruly, one of the unruly areas. And since we are, we must be shown our place. We must be taught that if you are not part of the status quo, and you question them, you question, you inquire, you ask for clarifications, then you're against them. And you're, might say, unpatriotic and even anti-UTLA, which is not, it couldn't be furthest from the truth.
I'm also a member of school in Central area. It is the area of resistance. That's for sure, the Central area. But I think one thing is that we basically it's important to go back to getting the district to spend that surplus, and so that we can fully fund our schools and have equality as far as funding goes. That would be one first step that we have to do. The other is treat all areas fairly, without regards to politics. All areas, we're all UTLA, we're all out there in the strike. We need to be treated all equally as areas. The other thing is that when I teach at a PLOS school, and a lot of these PLOS schools are centered in Central area. We need to give schools and we need to give members a way to get out of these organizations, first of all, if they want to. And also, we got to think about pilot schools as well. I've known a couple teachers that have lost their jobs and been reconstituted out. We should all be fighting under the same contract.
David Lyell, candidate for secretary. Thank you, Ms. Webster, for the question. It's such a difficult question. All right, Stacy. Thank you, Stacy, for the question. So, how do we get more resources for Central area? It's a difficult question. We're a democratic union, and one of the things we need to do with any issue that we're concerned with is organize and be our own best advocates. When we deal with the district forgets that the teachers are college-educated professionals, and within our union structure, we can make motions, we can organize, get members involved. I know that's a heavy lift. None of us here are getting paid to be here tonight, and so the short answer for what I would do is work with you to try to advocate for more resources for Central area, like motions, speaking up at meetings, getting organized. And thanks again, Stacy, for the question.
Greg Russel for president. Unfortunately, I wasn't all that involved in this development. I wish I was, but from what I've heard, it seems to be another problem from the undemocratic way things are run here, and it reminded me of some board of directors when I asked them to challenge the executive sessions of two different bodies. The one person asked for the executive session to be ended in the one body, but then didn't ask for it in the next committee meeting because he had taken a hit. Okay, that's how they describe it. You ask for something that is not popular with the people in power, you take a hit. So he had to pass off the next asking for why are we going into executive session to somebody else so they could share a hit. That's the way it works here. You got to play politics, and if you don't want someone that's a politician, you vote for me.
Great question, Stacy. I think, that's really why I'm here, right? To try to help the most underserved students in this city, right? If we're not here for that, what are we here for? And I think, it starts with education, political education, really igniting a movement down in South. I'm going down to South tomorrow to Wilmington Middle School for my first school visit. I'm really looking forward to listening to them. And I think, we'll spend millions of dollars on a school board race, right? But spend that money organizing these people, teaching these people about how they're being cheated, right? How the privatizers are stealing their right to a good, equal education. And you wake the community up, the grandmas, the parents, the students. And I know after the strike, South was still going. They didn't want to settle. They wanted more because they needed more. And I think we can ignite that fire. I'll ignite that fire. My flyer says start a people's movement in Los Angeles, right? And it's about equity. South needs more. They should have all the community schools down there, right? And that's what I'll fight for.
Our last question of the evening.
Hi, I'm Stacey Golden from Harbor area, and I just want to say that I appreciate you running because I like to have a choice. Just want to say that after the strike, local district South went through a major reorganization, but we were broken up into like 8 sub-communities. I know for one, my principal was promoted, and many principals were promoted and integrated into this new administrative body. Yet, I really didn't hear too much about it coming from UTLA, and I kind of felt like we may have been a bit off guard. I just want to know and with that being said, I think we should be a part of those discussions with LA Unified before they're made, and I think there's a way that we can legitimately be in the room other than just holding up banners angrily at school board meetings. I'd like to see us improve our relationships with the administration in that regard. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on LAUSD's reorganization plans and its impact, and how would you influence that if you were elected?
I think South is a guinea pig. The district is looking to see if they're poking the bear to see if we're awake. And that's what's happening in South area. I agree with you, there was no response. There was no unified official response from UTLA. We let it happen. I don't believe that it was ever discussed in the board of directors. I'd have to go back in the minutes, but I don't recall that it was discussed. It's happened. We know that it impacted psychiatric social workers because they were being asked to do some additional things, or other people were asked to do what they're not trained to do. And they were asking individuals to have broader responsibility in the services they provide to students, even though it doesn't fall within their purview. So again, the district is spoken to bear, and we have not responded appropriately.
I think, well, one easy answer is, with something like the school board, for instance, who make these kind of decisions, we are the biggest city in the United States with an elected school board. It is important that we do put some of our energy into electing school board members that are friendly to us and that will listen to us. Certainly, if we let the school board be taken over by privatizers, decisions like this will happen, and we'll have less of any kind of say when they break it up. Also, I think we need to push for a new superintendent that will be accountable to the teachers, that knows this district, that knows this city, that won't use this district as a guinea pig for his kind of business dealings. And we also need to really talk about cutting bureaucracy. I think starting with our administrators at our school site, who should be at least teaching one class themselves.
All right, I'll pick it up after.
And over.
David Lyell, candidate for secretary. Thank you, Ms. Golden, for the question. Part of what you asked is how do we improve relationships with administrators, right? Is that okay? And so I think as a union we should expose district waste, and we've done that at times, but some of the rhetoric from the union is not always helpful. We want to be able to just tell the public in plain, simple terms, the district is spending money over here, they're not serving students and communities by doing this, and here's how we can fix this. But sometimes I think the rhetoric from the union is helpful towards bridging a gap between finding a solution, or to get a solution, because we've alienated the other side so much sometimes. So we need to hold the district accountable, and by appealing to their common sense and appealing to the common sense of the community, repeating a simple message over and over that's truthful, that can resonate with members. Thanks again for the question.
Greg Russel for president. So the administration, so you got to deal with them and over time find out who you can trust, who you can't. Unfortunately, you can't trust them all. And so I've run into that, and they've now taken to the practice that, I don't know if it started here, but it was a practice here of, okay, you talk and we won't respond, we're going to take it back to our team. And there's no dialogue. And I think we can do better than that. There needs to be a dialogue. And as far as what UTLA can do, well, right now the UP monopoly does things that are politically advantageous to them. Do you see them here? It's not politically advantageous to them to be here. They were here. It's not that they didn't get here. They left because it wasn't in their advantage to be here. So that's one of the problems I would clear up. Thank you.
So one of the things I've done is started a caucus, right? Caucus of rank and file educators in Los Angeles, corela.education. I have a website, right? And the idea is to bring people in the union together around a new vision, right? To counter really what UP has done. And I think through the caucus, we could start to really study things like how is the district really managed, right? And once we start to understand that, we can start to develop an agenda, right, of our own, so they're not beating us to the punch. Because right now, what I think we'll find when we break down the district is the board is really just a puppet for the superintendent and his agenda. He controls them. Look at the surplus, $2 billion. How does that happen? Because The superintendent, the centimillionaire who privatized the Soviet Union, is here to do the same thing to LAUSD, and that's what's going on with this reorganization. And once we understand how this works, we're teachers, right? We're parents, we're students, we can beat them.
As a delegate for representing you at the NEARA, I've heard over the past 3 years, people from Atlanta, Memphis, New Orleans, Indianapolis, Newark, Detroit, and the entire state of Texas address the body with regard to the portfolio model. And that's what you're talking about, Stacy. This is a portfolio model. And the idea behind it, and Buettner has decided to call it the community of schools model. This is a portfolio model. The idea behind it is to give our schools ratings. Those schools that don't do well, they then are flipped over to charters because they can run them better. We are usually the canary in the coal mine on national issues. I heard these issues being brought up. I said, hey, what are we going to do about this? We have done nothing about the community of schools model because it's not the portfolio model. We were talking about the portfolio model a year ago. That was a conversation we were having. And I'm sorry that East and South are dealing with this right now, because it's a damn shame that we have not fought against this. If we don't fight against it, we are going to end up like New Orleans, and all of our schools will be charterized. The CCSA came out and said by 2030 they want 100% of our schools, California Charter School Association, 100% of our schools to either be charter or charter-like. That's what this portfolio model is. Don't sleep on it.
And thank you all for your questions. We have come to a close. I want to thank you all for staying. Thank you, Ms. Laura, for help setting up. Thank you, Ms. Randall, for being our timekeeper. I see your hand. Thank you, videographer, for documenting tonight's event. Thank you, Dr. Copeland, for this opportunity. Thank you, candidates, for your participation. Thank you all for staying past 9:30 p.m. At our close. In closing, I ask that our panel, that you stand, that you state your name, your office, and your opponents who you're running against.
Soni Lloyd, founder of Core LA. I'm running for UTLA president, running against Marissa Crabtree, Cecily Meyer Cruz from UP, Innocent Osunwa, Greg Russell. Thank you.
Wil Page, I'm running for the UTLA NEA vice president, and I'm not running against anyone. Others might be running against me. I'm running for a position, but those other two people happen to be Gabriel Serrano and then Alex Caputo-Pearl.
Elevated and up, right?
Okay. Tomas Flores, gentlemen. Tomas Flores, candidate for treasurer. Stanford MBA, 1978. I was a financial professional prior to becoming a teacher. This is my 32nd year in education, and I am running as a professional who can do the job of treasurer. The other individuals, one is an incumbent, Alex Orozco, and the other one is Anton Taylor.
All right, my name is David Feldman. I'm running for UTLA secondary vice president. I'm running against Jeremy Swing Weissman, who is of E4E, privatizers. And then also Julie Van Winkle from Union Power, and then there's me, David Feldman, running for secondary.
My name is David Lyell. I'm running for the office of UTLA secretary. There are two candidates running for the office of UTLA secretary, myself, David Lyell, and Arlene Inouye. Thanks again to everybody who put this on, and thanks for everybody for staying. And thanks for your consideration.
Okay.
Greg Russell for president. The only standout name out of the bunch, Soni Lloyd, Innocent Osunwa, Cecily Mara Cruz, Marissa Crabtree. I put this together.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Hot Chocolate. chocolate in the foyer. Take a treat. There's a little snack on the table. There's some tea, and you're welcome to corner our candidates.
Yay!
Thank you.
Good job, Dr. Copeland.
Oh, I noticed a lot.
Okay, so
It was Yes.
this is the only camera with Wil.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
Okay.
Take off.
Thank you, Doctor.
We're going to be actually having a debate. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you can keep it. There's a next time. I'll take theirs, but you guys can have yours, and I'll bring you another. If you just wanted, like, you know. What do you prefer? Which do you prefer? So actually, what we're
Can
gonna
we
do
keep these?
is, you can keep that, because what we're gonna do, we were supposed to have the title that you were running to on here, so I'm gonna redo it. So you can have that.
Oh, by the way, on the video too, disclaimer, right?
We did it.
Oh, sweet, okay. Sorry, good.
Yeah.
Strictly professional.
I just thought of that,
Yeah, none of your
I'll,
union dues was
I got on my tablet,
Well,
I don't
that
know
whole,
how
like,
she's got it, but I'll send it.
You know, this thing, the information herein represents this thing.
Yeah, we'll read that at the end for you.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
I'm glad. Are you still on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I like that.
Yeah, definitely, like your website. Thank you. I changed it up, I got my flyer up on the front now. Look at it again. Disseminate that information for a number of people. Cool, anytime.
Do you know where this is going to be posted, this video?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it on YouTube, and then probably just give it a fancy name. I'll put it on my website as well.
Yeah. And you'll see the search number of emails that we send out.
Okay, cool.
Buenas noches, señor. Okay. Igualmente, gracias. Okay.